Hello everyone, how's it going? I'm WoWcrendor and welcome back to another episode of Pointless Top 10, a show where we make top 10 lists of pointless things. Why are we flying by this pointless statue in Booty Bay? Because inside pointless things are treasure! Let's begin! Number 10 is Val'sharah and High Mountain, and this is a nice one because both of the zones are very aesthetically pleasing, and so when you combine both of those, you get this zone transition, which is it's got the mountainous, rough terrain of High Mountain, but it also has the kind of majestic neon green colors of Val'sharah, and it's really nice. When you think about it, it's like the zone transitions are the zones having a baby, and it's kind of creepy actually to think about it that way. Number 9 is the Wetlands in Loch Modan because of this big ass dam. So prior to the Cataclysm, you used to have all these dwarf heads, kind of like Mount Rushmore. It's like the Mount Rushmore of dwarves. And then after the Cataclysm, it just broke. It got hit by the Cataclysm, and then it shattered or something. I don't know what actually happened or the lore behind it. I just know it broke. And so now it is but a husk of its former self. But it's still got some water flowing out of it, as you can see. And it's still a very memorable zone transition to me. I always remember seeing that in Loch Modan, seeing that in the Wetlands, and just knowing like, oh, you know, this separates those two zones. And because of that, I had to put it on the list, and that's why it's at number 9. Number 8 is Zanger Marsh, and I cheated a little bit here because I didn't want to put 4 separate zone transitions for Zanger Marsh for all the categories, so I just put them all in this one. But they're all really cool. So we've got Hellfire and Zanger Marsh first off, and I really like this one because the brambles are stretching into Zanger Marsh, melding with the mushrooms. They're melding with the water. They're kind of overlooking the docks there. And then over here on the Hellfire side, it looks like there's some mushrooms that tried to grow into Hellfire, but they look kind of diseased. That one's like brown, and it's got like some bad soil, or the brambles kind of melded with it. I don't know. I just thought it was cool. Then there's Nagrand, and if you look at the Nagrand side, there's a lot of green grass, and that blends with the orange mushrooms and the blue, and I just thought it looks really colorful and cool. Here's another angle, which I think looks even better. It looks like a very vibrant Zanger Marsh when you look at it from this way, and it doesn't load the rain or any of the blue of the zone. And then there's Zanger Marsh and Terakar. And I think they blend pretty nicely because they have a similar foggy type of atmosphere, and the trees, I think, almost look like they could be Zanger Marsh trees. And then there's Blade's Edge, and Blade's Edge is one of those where it's like, oh my god, you first walk in and you see this giant mountain range, but then you realize that there are these big-ass spikes coming out of the mountains. You're like, whoa, I don't know what's going on there. Those are some big-ass spikes. And those are all the Zanger Marsh zone transitions. See, there's so many. And they're all really cool, and so I hope you appreciate them as much as I do. And that's number 8. Number 7 is the Dread Wastes and the Townlong Steppes, and it's kind of a weird mix of zones to put together, which is what makes it so cool, I think. You've got the atmosphere and the sky of the Dread Wastes, which is this kind of dark, gloomy, dim lighting, and then you've got this big-ass log that's just laying between the two zones, and it reminds me a lot of Grizzly Hills. It looks like there's seaweed almost hanging from it, even though it's just moss or grass or whatever it is. Either way, it's so cool. It reminds me, there's a little log. It's like a much smaller version in Grizzly Hills where you walk through and there's some light beams shining through. And I almost feel like the Blizzard team was like, hey, that was a really cool bridge. Let's do that and just expand it. Just make it a giant-ass log and you can walk through. I just realized how much I've been saying ass. I've been saying big ass and giant ass like at least 6 times this entire episode. We're not even halfway through. So that's number 7, big ass, giant ass log. Number 6 is Thousand Needles and the Barrens, and this is a pretty much pure nostalgic one. Because I always remembered going from the Barrens down to Thousand Needles. You get on the elevator, and you take the elevator down into the valley of the Thousand Needles, and then you're like, woo, I'm here. But now the elevator's broken, the bridge to the elevator's broken, the totem pole by it's broken, the Thousand Needles are flooded, and it's not what it used to be. But yeah, you can always have your nostalgia. You can always remember it, go back, and appreciate it for what it was. But aside from that, it actually has a lot of cool zone transitions as well. It's got all the brambles with the Quillbore, setting up camp here with RFD, RFK, I believe are both right here. And it's just a nice little old school style zone transition. And that's why it's at number 6. Number 5 is Stranglethorn, and Stranglethorn, I always forget that there's a northern and southern part of Stranglethorn. It's one of the things, it's like the Barrens, where there's the northern and southern part of the Barrens, but I can see that a little more than I can Stranglethorn. For some reason, I still see Stranglethorn as this one big, kind of like Florida. Stranglethorn's a lot like Florida to me. But when the Cataclysm hit, there's a giant-ass whirlpool. God, I said it again. I wasn't even trying to. Whatever. Giant-ass whirlpool. And, do you die if you go into the middle of the whirlpool? For some reason, I have 2 vague memories that I don't know if they're dreams or just weird memories. One is I went in there and my character got trapped in there and couldn't get out. I feel like that might have been during beta, or I might have just made it up and I'm thinking of something completely different. Or I just went in there and I died. It was one of the 2. And I don't remember what actually happens if you go into the whirlpool. Don't try it at home, kids. Unless you want to. And then report in the comments what happens to you. Say if you die or you live or you just go underwater or whatever happens. And number 4 is the Barrens. Just like Stranglethorn, the Barrens are now 2 separate zones after the Cataclysm hit. I'm acting like it just happened, like a now in the newest expansion. So yeah, when the Cataclysm hit, the northern and southern Barrens were split, and now there's a huge canyon. I almost said big-ass canyon. A huge canyon between the 2 zones. Some of it is still filled with lava. And this is one of the things that didn't really bother me as much when the Cataclysm happened. I always thought this zone transition was really cool. This is a canyon, right? It's like the gorge, and it's 2 mountains that got split. You know, that's a canyon, right? I'm not crazy. Or what would the actual terminology be? I'm pretty sure it is a canyon. Either way, I always thought this is just a really cool zone transition. The lava, the mountains, part of it's like all green and happy, and the other half is still like dry and barren. And I just think it's really cool. So that's number 4. Number 3 is the zone transition between the Arathi Highlands and the Hillsborough Foothills. It's just something I've always remembered since Vanilla WoW. And so it's somewhat of a nostalgic pick here at number 3. But I was kind of curious as to why this wall was even here. And so I went and did some research on it. Thorens Wall is a huge wall separating the Arathi Highlands and Hillsborough Foothills. The wall may have protected Stormguard and the Arathi Highlands from the invading Scourge, but this was not its original purpose, the wall having existed for many centuries prior to the Third War. Soon after establishment of the Kingdom Arathor and its capital Strom, King Thoradin ordered to build the Great Wall near the capital to shield the humanity from Amani incursions. In World of Warcraft, the gigantic wall is heavily damaged. In the Escape from Durnhold Keep instance, the wall is considerably better condition, but still quite damaged. It also says that the wall is presumably inspired by Hadrian's Wall, the ancient Roman Empire's northernmost boundary in Britannia, now England. So hey, a little bit of a history lesson, a little bit of a lore lesson, and a cool zone transition. So overall, you know, it's a giant-ass wall, okay? I had to say it. I'm sorry. That's number 3. We're moving on. Number 2 is the Ancient Passage, which is the transition between the Veiled Stair and the Kunlai Summit. And this is cool enough that it's pretty much its own thing. Like, the transition between these 2 zones is its own mini-zone, in a way, where you go through this passage on a boat. You have monkeys throw stuff at you. You've got the Grummels on the other side waiting to tell you about Lucky Doos. What's your Lucky Do? I had to do it. And it's easily one of the coolest transitions in the entire game of World of Warcraft. And apparently I was reading about it, and it says somehow it seems to be the source of all the rivers in Pandaria, with the exception of the waterfall that flows from the Vale of Eternal Blossoms into the Gilded Fanes. So I didn't even know that. That was kind of another cool little lore lesson that I learned just from researching the Ancient Passage. But aside from that, it's just neat. It's just cool. And that's why I put it at number 2. That's like half the reasons behind all the things that I state. It's like, well, why do you like this thing? Hey, it's cool. Listen, it's my show, and I can do any reasoning I want. And number 1 is Blackrock Mountain. This is easily the best zone transition in the game. It's just a giant, I'm not going to say it's a giant mountain. And imagine being back in Vanilla WoW, where you're riding around blasted lands or the burning steppes, and you just see this mountain, and you're like, wait, what is this? And you go inside, and there's dwarf heads with lava pouring out of their mouths. There's molten core. There's Blackwing Lair. It's got the first 2 raids of World of Warcraft in there, in this mountain, in this zone transition. It's got lava pouring down the outside of the mountain. It's got this crazy bridge leading up into the mountain. It's got these big dwarf doors that are kind of cracked open, so you're like, ooh, what's inside here? And it makes you kind of curious. It's the ultimate zone transition, and that's why Blackrock Mountain is number 1. Well, I guess it wouldn't be Blackrock Mountain as the actual thing. What would it be? It would be Burning Steps and the Searing Gorge. Burning Steps and Searing Gorge. I don't even know the zone transition zones for my number 1 pick. That's besides the point. Thank you for watching Pointless Top 10. This is extremely pointless. None of this matters. If you want to see more Pointless Top 10, type in Pointless Top 10 into YouTube. I've made a lot of these. You check them all out. Okay? Okay. See ya.